Hello and welcome to another Euro Daily here on Rabona TV, and my goodness, have Croatia ever fallen off from where they were 3 years ago? We'll get into that, as well as have a chat with MAH for England versus Scotland, so let's get started. Well, I think all of us chose to forget the first half of football between Slovakia and Sweden, as it was poor. Sweden had the same approach that they adopted against Spain, uber passive, sitting back in their 4-4-2 and barely going forward. It was Slovakia who sat back against Poland at times, but they dictated all of the play in the first half against Sweden, the only side that looked like they were playing for a win from the get-go, which is disappointing from Sweden, because I thought that they would have tried to have been on the front foot a little bit more. Part of the reason as to why Sweden were so negative and incapable of attacking in the first half could come down, in part at least, to Marcus Berg partnering Alexander Isak up front. If this tournament was being played last season when Berg was in great form for Krasnodar, then I would understand the start, but he's looked slow and poor in the link-up, leaving Isak to do it all himself more often than not. Thankfully, Isak has incredible feet and can tiptoe through defenders. And thankfully, Anderson realized how ineffective the Isak-Berg partnership was and put on the far more mobile and positive Robin Quaison in the 64th minute. Gotta remember that Sweden is still missing Dejan Kulusevski as well. He's on the bench now at least, as he has rejoined the squad from his COVID isolation. Here's hoping that he will add something to this side and they don't have to play so negatively in the future. An attack with Isak, Quaison, Forsberg, and Kulusevski? I mean, that sounds more like it. Will Anderson want them to be adventurous though? Probably not. But anyway, Quaison managed to win a penalty for Sweden as he was played through and then tripped by Dubravka as he poked it past the keeper. Forsberg stepped up and he became just the third player to convert a penalty at this tournament. 1-0 Sweden, the break that they really needed, and unfortunately for Slovakia, they were unable to get an equalizer. So Sweden with a 1-0 win, and that puts them on 4 points, which should be enough to go through. Slovakia plays Spain in their final match and will need at least a draw. Can't see that happening, but you never know. The Slovakian side has consistently impressed me, done better than I expected, so you can't count them out, especially with a misfiring Spanish side. The surprise of the Croatian lineup was that Brozovic wasn't in it, as he missed out with an apparent knee injury, at least from the start, and so Modric and Kovacic were the two central midfielders. The Czechs, fresh off of impressing against Scotland, started this match very well, with a couple of decent opportunities within the first 3.5 minutes. The Croatians were truly on their heels at that point, just as they were, as you'll remember, at the start of the England match as well. Throughout the first half, there was a sentiment of anything good in the attack from the Czechs would be thanks to Sofal, as he was a thorn down that right side for Croatia, constantly getting the better of Croatian fullback Gvardiol and linking up well with Czech right winger Masopust. Despite the pressure, Croatia blocked a few shots and the Czechs put the rest wide. And I mean, Croatia didn't really construct anything going forward until the 23rd minute, when Modric squared to Perisic and his strike was saved. Surprise, Perisic and Modric at the center of it. I'd say the catalyst to Croatia being a bit more positive, however, was Kovacic, as he had a very tidy match in the middle in that first half, driving forward when appropriate, breaking up play, linking well alongside Modric. It was good from him, and Brozovic's absence wasn't felt too much. And from what seemed to be a run-of-the-mill clash from a corner between Schick and Lovren, a penalty was awarded as the referee, upon consulting with VAR, believed Lovren's elbow was higher than it needed to be. It's an unfortunate penalty call, really, as it looked as if Lovren was just trying to propel himself. But from the ref's point of view, look at it this way. Let's say Schick and Lovren go up for a header in the middle of the pitch, and Schick carelessly elbows Lovren in the face in the same manner. No intent still. Not that intention is even mentioned in the laws of the game, which is something people forget, but he has struck his opponent in the face. Are you calling that a foul? Personally, I would think that you would. Here's what the laws of the game say about fouls. A direct free kick is awarded if a player commits any of the following offenses against an opponent in a manner considered by the referee to be careless, reckless, or using excessive force. One of those things could be if you strike or attempt to strike, including a headbutt, that would be a foul. And the definition of careless is when a player shows a lack of attention or consideration when making a challenge or acts without precaution. No disciplinary sanction is needed. And remember, the word intent doesn't show up in the rules of the game in this regard. Whether you mean to or not doesn't matter. That's why there's the careless aspect that they bring up. Anyway, you hate to see it, but I guess the referee was still operating within the laws of the game. She converted to take his tally up to 3 as he continues to be a fantastic forward for his country, celebrating, flexing in front of the camera as sweat and blood drip from his face. What a sight. Another sight to behold was how Croatia used that anger and frustration from the penalty call to come out flying in the second half. Ivan Perisic with some vintage stuff, cutting in from the left and rifling the ball toward the far corner to equalize for Croatia, and he nearly contributed to them going ahead as well as he dished to Vlasic, whose shot went wide, agonizingly wide of the post. So nearly the go-ahead goal there, but it ended 1-1. Really seemed like both sides were happy with a draw in the latter half of the second half. And I mean, that's what the third place aspect will do. Things are really not looking good for this Croatian side, are they? After this draw, they only have 2 victories in their last 11 matches, so the decline has been a sharp one for Croatia. But their fate is in their own hands still, as this draw, coupled with a win over Scotland, would likely see them through to the next round. Likely, just as it should be enough for the Czechs to go through already, but we'll see. As of this point of filming, England have not played Scotland yet, so we'll have a better picture there. So now, as mentioned, we will go to an interview I did with MAH, who you will remember from our England preview prior to this tournament. And guys, do me a favor, be sure to check him out, especially if you are a Chelsea supporter, as he has everything you would ever want. Interviews, discussions, analysis, everything. All right, let's get to the conversation. Let's start with the basics here, man, because, you know, the starting lineup has become, I think the anticipation of seeing the starting lineup is almost overshadows that of seeing the match itself sometimes. So,
yeah.
I mean, what did you think of this one? I think the only changes were the 2 fullbacks, correct? So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was happy to see Reece James and Luke Shaw come in, a natural left footer. And just for me, you know, Reece James is obviously a personal favourite as a Chelsea fan. Kyle Walker didn't have the greatest game against Croatia, maybe fatigue from a long season with Manchester City, I don't know, but his concentration was off, really poor passing, and just gave the ball away far too many times for me. So to see the fullbacks change was nice, because that was my initial issue with the starting 11 in the previous game against Croatia. And then the only other thing that I would have liked or hoped for is to see Jack Grealish. But again, I can understand why Sterling plays. He gets the goal. His confidence is probably running through his veins. So, you know, you go with it. And he's also got a lot of caps and he's very experienced. And I think, you know, as much as you want to see the silky, you know, sexy players, you also need to have a bit of experience in big tournaments. And Sterling's got a lot of caps. So, you know, it's not a massive issue. I think the starting 11, you know, is a solid starting 11. Just mainly uproar I can see from Jack Grealish not playing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and as the match went on, you just saw even more calls for it, as, you know, Scotland would sort of collapse into that back 5 and then a row of 3 in front of them. So do you think that it was that England was lacking a player such as Grealish? Do you think that he would have made a difference, or do you think that just the approach in general was wrong? I
mean, Grealish helps. You know, he's always come in top 3, top 4 in the Premier League every season for chances created, for 2 seasons running since Aston Villa have come up. And England do need creativity. He's the kind of throwback footballer that England have lacked for many years. And of course, you have Phil Foden, you have, you know, Mason Mount, but these guys are very young, so a lot of pressure on their shoulders to do this on the big stage. And again, not many caps. Grealish doesn't have that, but he's definitely got a lot of experience. You know, he's in his prime. So a player like that, of course, definitely helps as well. And England, just, you know, from a playing standpoint anyway, they've always been a little bit of that. You know, they're not the most flamboyant team under Southgate in terms of breaking down teams. They are a team that rely on set pieces, sometimes penalties in previous World Cups, hint, hint. So it is what it is, man. This is England. This is the story of England.
And you mentioned earlier Sterling, how he scored, and then you start him after that, you know, just to see if he can ride that wave of confidence and maybe keep it going. On the opposite end of that, you know, you have someone like Harry Kane, who again had a very quiet night, a very frustrating night. It could be partially down to, you know, some were saying or speculating that it looks like he was playing injured and he was looking a little slow on the ball. Some were saying, you know, it was just a lack of service. So with these first 2 matches gone by, does he start again, or do you give, you know, like a Calvert-Lewin a go?
Good question. I mean, do you know what? I don't see a world where he doesn't play. He's just, he's Harry Kane. He's literally one of the best strikers in the world, and he's England's best player on his day. So I don't think Southgate's going to have have even the thought process even going through him to even think about making that change. I think we just need to adapt tactically. And this is what my worry was with Southgate in this tournament, is that when the game's not going the way you want it to, in-game management is a big thing. Can you change the shape? Can you make those little detailed tweaks that the top managers can to bring the flow of the game into your favor? And again, I personally just don't think he's got the ability to do that. So if it doesn't just kick off, guns blazing for England, there will be issues during the game for me. In Scotland, they're a decent outfit. They've got some solid Premier League players in there. Scott McTominay and Manchester United, Billy Gilmour as well, Robertson, Tierney. They've got a decent team who can turn up and do and cause an upset. So this is it. And England, to be honest, even after the win against Croatia, they didn't play brilliantly. They didn't create a ton of chances anyway. So this was kind of the warning sign already.
Yeah, it definitely. I got torched a little bit for saying that I didn't think that England played very well against Croatia. And I think that, now that people maybe watched that Croatia match against the Czech Republic from earlier, maybe they've started to see, only 2 wins in the last 11 matches for Croatia. So this is definitely not a team that's at the peak of their powers anymore. But let's get back to this opposition. And you mentioned him, Billy Gilmour. I thought he had a really great game as well.
Yeah.
Just 18 at Wembley, Scotland versus England, that old rivalry. What did you make of his game overall? He's obviously, he has a place in your heart as a Chelsea supporter, but what did you think?
I'm proud, man. I'm really proud and excited for him because, I know how talented he is and what a prospect I think he is, but because he's not clocked up the minutes that, maybe wonder kids do, that, other, people that maybe don't follow Chelsea so closely maybe don't see what I see in him in terms of his potential. I'm just really happy for him. That's the one shining light on the whole game, because it was a very boring game and obviously England didn't get the win that they needed to get. But Billy Gilmour's performance was really mature, really established. And this is what we see from Billy Gilmour. He takes the ball in very tight situations. He can play out of a press. He can move. He's very mobile. And he, for me, is the long-term successor to a Jorginho at Chelsea.
Absolutely. And, he and the rest of Scotland, I was very much impressed with, They weren't playing the kind of football that I thought they would. I saw 5 at the back and I immediately thought, oh God, this is just going to be a barrage from England. But it wasn't that, was it? It wasn't long ball every time. They would play short. They would mix it up a little bit. They even tested Pickford in the back line a couple times. So What did you make of their performance as a whole? Do you think that they're going to make it out of this group now?
I was impressed. This is the kind of Scottish performance I was expecting in the first game. 2 up front, very ambitious in that stretch. They played the back 5 or back 3 turned into a back 5, but they did play 2 up front. They created the first clear-cut opportunity down the right hand side with some really good football as well, really good cutback. They played some really good stuff at times. So I was quite surprised. But as I said earlier, Scotland do have some solid players. They do have some really good quality in their team. Robertson, one of the best left backs in the world, down the left-hand side, bobbing forward, creating chances. It's a little bit of a lopsided team at times with him on the pitch. But, when you've got quality like that, you're going to use it. And, you still expect England to go through. But this is, again, not that they needed a rain check. And it was raining in London, pardon the pun, but they need a rain check, and they got it today. So let's see now in the rest of the tournament if they've woken up, because today obviously wasn't good enough.
No, yeah, that it absolutely didn't seem good enough. And with the way that the Czechs are playing, it's not from the outset, it was looking like England would be absolutely through at this point. You're looking ahead to this match against the Czechs. How confident are you going into this one? Do you think that the man that has been locked away, Jadon Sancho, will see some minutes in this match?
Oh, I don't know, because the thing is with Southgate is I haven't seen a good Jadon Sancho, great really Sancho performance under Southgate's watch. So whether it's even in Southgate or Sancho's best interest to even join forces and play is another question, because he never seems to do it for him. They just don't seem to see eye to eye in terms of how Sancho should be playing as he does at Dortmund. Am I confident? Kind of, but I guess, to be honest, England would do better to finish second in this group, because if you finish first, you get one hell of a tie in the next round. So maybe this is all part of the plan.
Yes, sir. I remember in our preview, you sort of pointed towards the World Cup 2018. People have sort of had a rethink of that. And maybe you said it wasn't quite as it seemed at the time. And I couldn't help but think of that during this group stage match in particular. The not being able to convert from set pieces, you take that away from this England side, and suddenly getting goals from open play is very laborious. So would you say that for the most part you're performing at the same level as they were at 2018, or do you think that there has been improvements made to this English side, but just the rest of the world is catching up or something?
To be honest, it's a really good question, and I don't think they've really kicked on. I can't say they have until I see a proper performance against a top team where they do, like you said, score goals from open play, and they do look like they can survive on more than just set pieces and penalties. Then I can't say that they've improved enough, or definitely not improved a lot. Is the quality of the squad better? I think technically, like we said before, I think there is a lot of technical players. There is a lot of options. You talk about Grealish, you talk about Sancho not starting. That's quite impressive to have players of that ilk not being in your starting 11. You've got depth, you've got options. But in terms of, the actual style and the system and the plan on the pitch hasn't improved because it's the same manager. And I don't mean to be so harsh on him, but this is his tournament. This is his big moment to prove what he can do. Because otherwise, if he can't do that, for me, he shouldn't be in charge for that World Cup. If he can't make any strides forward, there has to be clear progress. And so far, there hasn't been. And you can see, look at the Italian team, look at the progress there. You want progress. That is your example and definition of progress right there. So if we're doing comparisons, then England are nowhere near making the strides they could be making in comparison to others.
I think that they're absolutely the benchmark as far as having a very clear identity and a clear plan, and the players always seem to know where they're going to be without even looking up, and I think that this is something that it's still match after match. I don't know what England's approach is. I still don't know. And it's really a shame, isn't it? Because this is a team that, as you said, is so blessed.
Yeah, it is. It is a shame, but it's not really a surprise. Like I said, if the difference between Mancini and Southgate in terms of manager credentials is quite high, and I do really believe that is the biggest change England could make to change their fortunes in this team would be starting with the manager, and then afterwards, then you have to look to a few players and think to yourself, have you made completely the right selections in terms of not only the starting 11 but the squad as well. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Hopefully they can improve as the tournament goes on. Sometimes big teams do start sluggishly and they improve as the tournament goes on. So that's my hope. But yeah, we're going to have to utilize our options a little bit better than this and try and create more opportunities, because it's a ball fest so far.
It's always a pleasure having him on. So thank you, Matisse. I appreciate you. And now let's see what that did to the table. So in Group D, the Czech Republic are on top for now on goal difference, and they will face off against England in the next match. It is 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4 in the next round of matches. And it is wide open, isn't it? But hey, that's it for this video, guys. I thank you for taking the time to watch it. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll go ahead and check out MAH on YouTube. And of course, we will absolutely have a watch along today for Portugal versus Germany. I'm nervous, but I'm very, very excited. Thanks again, guys, and we'll hopefully see you then.